Okay, this meeting is now called to order Monday, June 14, 2021. Councilman Quadri, please lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman. Mrs. Kraus, please read the statement of public notice.
Take notice that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with NJSA 10:4-10 as follows. The notice of the meeting was prominently posted on the bulletin board at the municipal building located at 225 Main Street, Little Falls, New Jersey, on February 17, 2021. A copy of the notice was faxed to the North Jersey Herald and News and the Record on the same date. Additionally, a copy of the notice was filed in the office of the Township Clerk on said date. This meeting is being conducted under the circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 health situation. No public will be allowed to attend the meeting in person. A link and a telephone number to join the meeting can be accessed on the Township website at www.lfnj.com. Electronic provisions have been established for the public to participate during the public comment portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Kraus. At this time, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hablitz,
Present.
Councilmember Kawadi,
Present.
Councilmember Sieber,
Present.
Councilmember Vanchery,
Present.
Council President Scoba.
Present. At this time, Mayor Damiano, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. This evening, we do have two proclamations which we wish to share with the residents of this township. The first being for the LGBTQIA Pride Month proclamation, and the second being a proclamation recognizing Emancipation Day. And the first one we're going to begin with this evening is the proclamation in recognition of Pride Month. And it reads, whereas our nation was founded upon the declaration that all people are created equal, that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are among the inalienable rights of every person, and that each person shall be accorded to the equal protection of the law. And whereas the LGBTQIA community has made great strides forward, but equality, inclusion, and acceptance have not yet been fully achieved, we must practice these values and teach them to future generations. And whereas this year marks the 52nd anniversary of the Stonewall riots, the birth of Pride celebrations as we know them, during LGBTQIA Pride Month, we commemorate the events of June 1969 and commit to achieving equal justice under the law for the LGBTQIA community. And whereas we celebrate and support our LGBTQIA community's rights to live their lives out loud during Pride Month and every month, and as we celebrate Pride, we must continue to demand equal rights for all. Now, therefore, I, James Belford Damiano, Mayor of the Township of Little Falls, do hereby proclaim June 2021 as LGBTQIA Pride Month in the Township of Little Falls, and we encourage all residents to celebrate the progress within our culture towards justice, equality, and full civic recognition for LGBTQIA persons, and to join us in the fights that remain to be won. Next, we have a proclamation recognizing Emancipation Day, and it reads, whereas Emancipation Day, also known as Juneteenth, is a holiday to commemorate the freedom of slaves in the United States. And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation was issued by Abraham Lincoln on September 22nd, 1862, and went into effect January 1st, 1863, which paved the way to abolish slavery. And whereas 2 years would pass before the news reached slaves in Texas on June 18th, 1865, and announced on June 19th, 1865. And whereas Juneteenth became a state holiday in Texas in 1980 and has spread to other states, and the day is used to celebrate and recognize achievements of African Americans. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor James Belford Damiano, along with the Township Council, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2021 as Emancipation Day in the Township of Little Falls. Council President, that's all that I have for my reports this evening. And then, of course, when it comes time for my agendas, I'm happy to begin addressing that.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing up those two important proclamations. At this time, can I have a motion to open the meeting for the public for general matters only?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Moved by Councilmember Hablitz, second by Councilmember Kawadi. All those in favor of opening for general matters only, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to that motion signify by saying nay. The motion carries. Mrs. Kraus, can you please read the statement?
Members of the public who desire to provide comment shall raise their virtual hand in the Zoom application. The meeting moderator will cue the members of the public that wish to provide comment, and the council president will recognize them in order. Members of the public who have joined the meeting by calling in must press *6 to mute and unmute themselves and *9 to raise their hand. Members of the public who have joined the meeting via the Zoom application must click the reactions icon and then the raise hand icon. Please give your name and address for the record. Once the process is complete, we'll return to the regular order of business.
Thank you, Mrs. Kraus. The floor is now open.
We have Mr. Karatkin first, Council President.
Mr. Crocken, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President Scober. Arnie Karatkin, 181 Long Hill Road, Little Falls, New Jersey. First, I'd like to thank the mayor for those two very significant proclamations that really mark significant events that have occurred in my lifetime in this country, and it's good to see them come to fruition. I just emailed Mayor Damiano and Council President Scober the comments or questions I'm going to ask so they could follow along after I read them all, so they could, perhaps respond to them one at a time. So these are questions regarding the Hemlock Road improvement proposal. So my first question is,
Mr. Karatkin, I don't want to interrupt you here, but right now this is the public hearing on the submission of a 2021 New
oh, I'm
Jersey.
sorry, I thought this was
Oh,
general
I'm sorry.
matters. I'm sorry.
This is general matters now?
General matters, Mayor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kraken. I apologize. I was
Okay.
jumping ahead on the agenda. My apologies.
The floor is
Mayor
yours. Go
Damiano,
ahead,
I
Mr.
accept your
Crocken.
apology. Thank you. So my first question is, how did the township acquire the right to utilize a portion of the church's parking lot in order to access Hemlock Road? My second question is, once the new entry to Hemlock Road through the church parking lot is completed, what are the township's plan for the existing unpaved portion of Hemlock Road? How will it be utilized? Will it be turned into open space? And my third question regarding this is, with respect to the proposed removal of the 20 shade trees, has this been brought to the attention of the Shade Tree Commission? And are there plans to replace the 20 trees, specifically with hemlocks, to reflect the historical name of the road? And I have another set of questions about something else, but those are my questions about the Hemlock Road project.
So thank you, Mr. Crocken, for joining us this evening and your questions concerning Hemlock Road. Mayor, would you like to take the first couple of questions, answer the first couple of questions regarding the church parking lot, the access, and the entry?
Sure thing, Council President. So there has been some discussion with the church regarding access from the the Long Hill Road side of the intersection. And it appears that, they're not overly thrilled about the idea of it meeting there. So there is still some ongoing discussion, although the need for continued discussion may not exist because there may be reasonable solutions that address everybody's concerns in the Hemlock Overlook, Birch, High Court, all of those roadways in that area's concerns. And what I mean by that is that there is a possibility that the roadway be paved without the need to connect at all at the top of Long Hill Road there. And what a possible solution to that may be, and in fact, I've reached out to a couple residents on Hemlock, I should say the unfinished portion of Hemlock. And one of the discussions I had with them was the possibility of turning Hemlock Road in that area into a cul-de-sac or a dead-end roadway with access that would come from the Overlook Ave side of the road. This would eliminate cars from utilizing it as a cut-through or pass-through or speedway, as some people indicated. It would prevent all of that because there would be nothing but a dead end that people would approach, and there would obviously be no access from the Long Hill side of it. So that may give us the opportunity to provide these residents with a paved roadway. It may not have to impact the church at all. The discussions and negotiations with them can cease entirely because there may not be any need for that whatsoever. So that addresses, I believe, your A and B with respect to access through the church parking lot and negotiating with them and getting the right to utilize it. So that is one of the possibilities. As far as the open space that may then exist in that area as a result of us owning a portion of the roadway there, frankly, as much as we like to have open space in town, open space results in a lot of maintenance for our DPW staff, and it results in additional lawns to be cut and things to be maintained. So there is an opportunity, I believe, for the township to actually turn that, although it'll be an unimproved area of land, there may be an opportunity for the municipality to first offer it to neighboring or bordering property owners in order to sell off the land, and that could be the church possibly, or one of the other adjoining property owners up there who would have the first right to purchase the land at fair market value if that's what they choose to do. I do not believe that additional lot size would permit anything to be developed on it. I would confirm that first. And if and when it is deeded, we can, prohibit any sort of development on it. So although it wouldn't be open space in the general sense of it being parkland, we may be able to have additional grassy yards of a resident up there or something of the sort. That would be my preference over having a very tiny little pocket park on the intersection of Long Hill Road and Notch Road up there, which presents its own safety issues to begin with. So that may be a possibility there. As far as C, your question regarding the removal of trees in that area, I'm not sure if the roadway dimensions or the roadway itself is going to be changed if we do move forward with the idea of this cul-de-sac. So I don't know if 20 trees will remain 20 trees. I'd have to specifically look at that section of the plan. I also believe that a couple of the trees that are up in that area are ash trees, and we are now dealing with something called the emerald ash borer here. This is not unique to Little Falls. This is unique. Well, I guess North America is dealing with the emerald ash borer, and it is killing off ash trees here in the United States. And I think a number of those trees were ash trees. I will tell you that the town does remain committed to replanting trees throughout the township. In fact, I see Mr. Vettery just joined us, and he, with his assistance, along with the Passaic River Coalition, last Friday, actually, with the assistance of Anheuser-Busch and some of their employees and our DPW, there were, Mr. Vettery could tell us the exact number of trees, but there were a substantial number of real sizable trees planted just this past Friday alone. So we do remain committed to continuing to plant trees throughout the township. We have continued to do so, especially in our open space in the Singac area of town, especially along the river, which always helps with absorbing some of the water in that area where it's a particular problem for our residents. So certainly replanting trees is something that we have and will continue to do. I don't know that they will be replanted along Hemlock Road itself. I can tell you that I know there was some concern, and just to jump a little bit from this particular question, about the 4 or 5 trees that were removed on Maple Ave recently in town. The Maple Ave improvements include 11 trees that will be installed along Maple Ave itself. So we will be essentially doubling the number of trees that were removed. Again, some of those were ash trees in the sense that they would not, so the assumption is they wouldn't have been there for much longer anyway, and many of those were interfering with power lines and frequently being trimmed. So while we do remain committed to planting trees, of course, smart and appropriate trees in the areas that they're being planted is something that we always take into consideration as well. So trees will continue to be replaced throughout the township. Again, whether they are hemlocks along Hemlock Road is certainly a remaining question, but trees throughout the township is certainly something that we are committed to.
Mr. Crockett, were those questions answered?
Yeah, I have one other thing, and then I want to make a comment. So the second quick question deals with the town's intent to purchase the PNC parking lot. What is the status of that?
Okay. So the question is, what is the status of the PNC parking lot? As you know, we're in negotiations. Mayor, would you like to give whatever details you can concerning that?
Sure. I'm smirking only because, and Mr. Wenzel is smirking as well, because I sent him an email about this, I think once every 72 hours, about the status of PNC parking lot. It is currently in PNC's hands. The attorneys for PNC, I believe it was on June 6th, most recently, told Mr. Wenzel that next week we would, well, I can tell you closer dates. It might have been the second or third that they told Mr. Wenzel that next week that we would have a response, which would have been last week. We still don't have a response. So we are anxiously awaiting PNC's comments on the potential contract for the sale of the lot. I am most interested in moving and expediting this process. And Mr. Wenzel is very well aware of that and continues to follow up with them frequently. Unfortunately, I don't have more to report on that at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to just make some comments about Montclair State University.
Okay, Mr. Crockett.
Thank you. I don't know if people are aware that a new president has been announced, Jonathan Coppell, who's currently at Arizona State University. He'll assume the position sometime at the beginning of August. And he is a local boy in a sense that he was born and raised in Bronx, New York. And his father, Oliver Coppell, was a New York City and New York State politician, briefly serving as New York State Attorney General. And the last thing I'd like to share regarding COVID, that when students at Montclair State return to campus, whether they're living on dorms or going for face-to-face classes, all students must show proof of COVID vaccines. So I think that's positive, and hopefully, Mayor Damiano, with the new president, there'll be a new wave of positive negotiations with MSU as compared to that when Dr. Cole was in office. So good luck.
From your lips, Mr. Karakian, I can only hope that the relationship with Little Falls will be better going
Well,
forward.
faculty is assuming the same positive outcome, so we're in the same boat. Thank you.
Happy to hear.
Mr. Crockett, thank you for joining us this evening and for asking some very important questions. We hope we answered your questions as thoroughly as possible.
Yes,
And
you
thank you for the information concerning the new president at Montclair State University. We wish him well. Mr. Kusia, is that Mr. Fernandez who's next?
Mr. Fernandez is next.
Okay, Mr. Fernandez, the floor is yours, sir. We just.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. The floor is
Okay.
yours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. This is just a follow-up question to Mr. Korotkин.
Yes.
He mentioned something, in fact, Mr. Damiano, you mentioned something about buying a piece of land of Hemlock Road and making it like a cul-de-sac section. Will the open space money that the township collects from each and every homeowner be used for that program, to buy off Hemlock?
Mayor?
Sure, Mr. Fernandez. No, we are not. The township already owns Hemlock Road. We own the roadway itself. If we create a cul-de-sac towards the, I guess it would technically be the south side of Hemlock, there would be additional space between Hemlock Road and Long Hill Road because it would dead end rather than it continuing all the way through.
Okay.
We could create some open space. Not that we're purchasing open space, not that there's no funds necessary to purchase open. We would own it, and it would just create a vacant land area more so than using the term. We're using the term open space to refer to it, I believe. So that is the area of the property that I'm referring to that we can then offer to sell to adjoining property owners first. Again, so that it's their responsibility to maintain it, and B, it becomes a rateable property. Again, although unimproved, a rateable property for the township, rather than it being a burden to the township that we don't collect taxes on and need to maintain.
All right, thank you. Thank you for clarifying this. And so let me make sure that I understand. So no money from the county open space program will be used to buy that piece of land. That's
No, we already own the land.
okay. All right, two more questions, and just bear with me. And one is for the township planner, Mr. Conklin. I was going to ask you this question a month ago, but I wasn't allowed. So I read what you wrote about the new developer developing that piece of land of Patterson Avenue. I'm sure this is regarding your comments last month, I believe. And so many, one building is going to be a huge building. So many apartments are going to be built, and so on and so forth. It also mentions the height of the buildings, and but there was one question, and I asked the same question to you last week, Mr. Mayor, about the pile-up, if you remember, payment in lieu of parking. It bothers me that a new developer is going to profit, is going to increase the profit by just paying X amount of dollars for each parking space that he cannot create, that he cannot provide the tenants. And it bothers me because he's gonna make money. We are gonna suffer the consequences of the traffic and the parking space, the ones that are near Patterson Avenue. Does it bother you when you made that comment and when you wrote that thing? Does it bother you that, or since I imagine you are far away from Patterson Avenue, so it wouldn't affect you at all?
Mr. Fernandez, are you asking our planner, Mr. Conklin, if
Yes.
it bothers him about the pilot parking
Yeah.
program?
Yeah,
As he-
because I already know what the mayor said.
I'm sorry, sir.
I already had the answer from Mr. Damiano last week.
But are you asking, that was not decided by Mr. Conklin?
But
Are you asking-
I read the comments that he made. And in fact, those comments went to the planning board and they were approved by the planning board. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. So there's a chain of people that agreeing with all these, paying, if it's necessary, if it comes down to that, paying $5,000 per parking space that the developer cannot provide.
Okay, so let's have that discussion if you don't mind.
And my question is, why should this developer benefit when the rest of the city, the taxpayers in Little Falls, if they want to open up a business, they have to provide X amount of parking spaces. If they want to open up anything, they have to have X amount of parking spaces. Here comes Joe Big Box, and he says, no, I'm not going to provide so many because I'm going to make more money by not providing them.
No.
That bothers me. It really
Okay.
bothers me because he shouldn't have any more. He shouldn't benefit from that.
I understand the gist of your question, so let's just have a little dialogue about it. The pilot program is, and you use the word tenants, it's partly right. It's not for the residential portion of this development, sir. It's for the business portion of this.
Correct.
development. Okay, so, and they are tenants, so it's not like that was incorrect, but it's not for the residential tenants. It's for the commercial portion of the building itself.
Right.
So that's what that's pertaining to. So are you asking, like, why do we do this?
I'm asking, why should our developers benefit, this developer in particular, benefit from that program when the rest of the town, the homeowners in town and people that they want to open up a business in town, they have to provide X amount of parking in order to open up the business or make the businesses smaller. And the proof is right down the block from me on Jackson, when, I'm not going to mention any names, wanted to open a donut place.
A donut operation, yes.
He had to provide X amount of spaces and X amount of tables had to be, in order to put so many tables in the place, he had to have so many square footage. And since he didn't have the square footage, he had to make the spaces smaller and so forth and so forth. So if a private citizen cannot benefit by paying, let's say, $5,000, $10,000, why should a big developer benefit himself?
Council President.
Yeah, before, okay, the mayor, go ahead, Mayor Damiano.
So, Mr. Fernandez, the pileup is very clear in that a pileup would only be acceptable to the township when it is directly adjacent to township public parking. So we could not allow a pileup on the redevelopment project that occurred on Main Street near the 381 site formerly, because there is nowhere that a visitor or a car could park except for on a roadway in front of someone's home, down a side street, if there wasn't adequate parking on that site. So a pileup only works when there is adjacent township parking lots. And in the downtown, we have adjacent public parking lots. In fact, there's a mutual benefit to a pileup. And as much as I like to be a pioneer and be the first to do things, I can't say that myself for this council or Mr. Cuccia were absolute geniuses in coming up with a pileup. We didn't invent it. There was pileups that were offered by a number of other municipalities throughout the country over the years. And the reason that they all did this, and the reason that we believe it's beneficial in Little Falls, is because of the mutual benefit. The mutual benefit is it allows a developer to develop a little bit more of a dense building and not provide parking. That's the benefit that the developer receives. In turn, the township receives a payment in lieu of that parking space, the acronym pilot. And again, ours is $5,000 per space, which allows the township to do things like invest in new meters for metered parking, improve our township parking lots, which in turn allows the township to generate substantial revenue from individuals who are parking in those public parking spaces. So by the developer being short on these spaces, it will help to offset the expenses that this township will incur over the years, from police to everything else, because it's additional revenue that this township will receive. And God forbid, absent another pandemic, towns that have public parking, paid public parking, it is a substantial portion of their revenue. And they felt the impacts of the lack of the public using their parking last year during the pandemic. They had substantial shortfalls in their revenues. And I say that because if that becomes a new source of revenue for the township, it will assist every one of us on this Zoom call. Maybe with the exception of our engineer and planner who don't reside here, everyone else who resides in Little Falls will receive the inherent benefit of there being additional revenues because people want to go to these businesses where there is not on-site parking. So this is very different than the other sites that you may mention. It's very different than the redevelopment that happened where 381 formerly used to be. So it is a distinguishable difference between those things. It's important to note that, again, there's benefits to both parties in this. And typically, the best deals are won where everybody wins. And in this case, everybody can win, including all of us as taxpayers.
I'm glad
Mr.
you
Fernandez, would you like to ask?
I'm glad you see it that way. I do not see it that way. I feel, and this is my feeling, that it's going to bring a more traffic congestion to an area that is already congested. And it's a very heavy traffic area, like Patterson Avenue is, and it's going to bring more and more cars and more traffic. That's the way I see it. You see it the other way. We have
I never said that. I agree with you. It's going to bring more traffic. I hope it brings more traffic because I hope we have a busy hopping downtown, that on a Friday night, there are people utilizing the restaurants. There are people visiting the stores. There are people in the downtown. So with that traffic comes life to the downtown, which I am absolutely looking forward to in Little Falls. So I don't disagree with that statement. I never indicated that this would reduce traffic. I did say that this would provide a financial benefit to the town because of the additional traffic that will be coming in. So I don't disagree with that statement, and I certainly welcome it and look forward to a busy and hopping downtown.
Before we move on, does any council members have any comments regarding Mr. Crocking questions or Mr. Fernandez?
I'd like to add something.
Councilman Quaddy, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Mr. Fernandez, I'm just wondering if you realize that we currently have a diner downtown that provides no parking. We have a coffee shop that employs a nonprofit coffee shop that employs people with special needs that provides no parking. We have a jewelry store that provides no parking. We have a comic book type store that provides no parking. All of those businesses along Main Street are already utilizing the concept that we're discussing here. We're just expanding it to another part of the town and providing for a means for the township to take in revenue while those new businesses go in to improve the parking situation that already exists. I'm just wondering if you realize that this is a.
But you know, I realize something, and I don't know if I may be allowed or Mr. Escobar may not like it, but I don't know who made you the major spokesman, because every time after I make a comment regarding the mayor, you come up like mini me. And
I'll tell you, I'll answer that question. The
I
residents
don't
of
know,
Little
I don't know
Falls,
where you,
residents of Little Falls gave
are
me
you
a
the
voice.
spokesman for Mr. Damiano?
Excuse me, Mr.
Mr.
Fernandez.
Mr. Excuse me
The
1 second.
residents of Little Falls
Oh.
gave me a voice at
Right,
this
right.
meeting when they elected me.
Yeah, but
And-
they didn't
and
elect
you
you
don't- you may
as a
not like-
spokesman.
You may
They
not
didn't-
like hearing
Okay.
what
No,
I
I
have
do not
to
like
say,
you.
Let me,
But
hold on one
that's
second.
fine.
Mr. Fernandez,
but I'm not
Mr.
going to sit here while you insult me, sir.
I didn't insult
So-
you. I said, who made you the spokesman for Mr. Damiano?
Mr. Fernandez,
What you
Councilman,
called me a name.
Councilman,
Who, Mr.
Councilman, hold on
Damiano,
one
not
second.
you.
You resorted to name calling, sir.
Mr.
No,
Fernandez.
I did not.
Councilman, Mr. Fernandez, I asked if the council would like to comment. At that moment, the council has a right to speak what is on their mind, sir. And that's the platform that we have. That's why this is a council meeting. They're elected officials, so Councilman Kwadi is speaking. The floor was given for him to speak that way. He's not speaking, as you suggested, that's his own thoughts of what he brings to this council meeting,
All
okay?
right,
So-
my last question. Am I allowed to ask the last question?
Yes, the floor is yours, sir.
The is regarding the Peckman River project. I read that our Congresswoman,
Mikey, sure.
Mikey
Congressman Sherrill.
Sherrill. Yeah, she went in front of the appropriation committee and was asking for funds for certain things, quite a few things. Actually, I think it was 10 altogether. But he didn't mention the Peckman River. Has the funding for the Peckman River been approved?
Yeah, you're asking if the Congress, the United States Congress approved the Peckman River funding the way we hope that it's going to be funded. I don't know if we have any answers. Mayor, do you have any update on that?
I do have an update on that. Just recently, June 5th, I received, which was Sunday, I received information that the Peckman project was not included in the president's budget. So the Congresswoman submitted it yesterday, which would have been June 4th, as one of the community projects before the portal closed that they have to introduce their projects. They held an open spot for this particular project through our Congresswoman's office. And they used the resolutions that Little Falls and Woodland Park submitted to them as support for the project to be funded. So we are hoping that it has momentum in that pipeline because it did not receive the support that it needed in the president's budget.
So the answer is no, it hasn't been.
Correct.
Correct.
Any idea when we'll get an answer?
I don't know that answer.
No. Okay, thank you.
But Mr. Fernandez, we'll circle back to the Congresswoman and see if we can find that out, okay? Thank you for joining us this evening and your questions and your comments. Mr. Kusia, are there any other speakers under general matters?
No other speakers, sir.
I think there's a hand up by Mr. Scherzer. Is that correct?
Mr. Vettery has a hand up.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
It's a
Well,
thumbs up.
Mr.
I guess
Scherzer
that's-
does as well. He does as well, looks like, because he just raised his hand. He may not,
So
if he wants to hit the hand button.
why don't we, if Mr. Vettery, hold on a moment. Mr. Schweizer, can you hear me? Mr. Schweizer, can you hear me?
Unmute. There you
Yes,
go.
I can hear
Mr.
you.
Schweizer, Schweizer, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, you have the floor, sir. We're under general matters.
yes. I'm sorry, I'm a little late tonight.
No, not at all.
I wanted to talk to you about the pandemic, and I had the opportunity last week to spend 40 minutes meeting with the health director of Clifton and his health educator. And by the way, they're remarkably easy to get a hold of. They have this new website where
Yeah.
you just.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you. As protocol, you have to give your address. I'm sorry.
Surely. My name is Norman Scherzer. I live on 26 Birch Road.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
So I had an opportunity to talk to the director of public health. And one of the things that I want to keep going back to is I'm assuming that we have not declared an end to the pandemic, or we would not be meeting remotely. So I'm looking as kind of like as a symbol that life is returning to normal when my colleague, Mr. Fernandez and so on, are able to walk into the room together with you guys. And I assume that you can't wait for it to end as well. So I'm delighted to see that the cases are down. What he shared with me was very interesting, that he thought that the new cases, and granted they're much smaller, would be in local businesses, and it turns out that they're not. And he was talking not just about Little Falls, but about Clifton in this area. that what we were seeing where there were cases were family cases. It was family transmission. And when I asked him, is there any reason why he would not be willing to appear before this council periodically to give us an update? He said, if he's invited, be happy to do it. And the reason for that is Mr. Damiano, you and I had a misunderstanding about my bringing to the attention of the council the fact that our vaccination rate in Little Falls was lower than surrounding towns. And you raised a legitimate point. You said that maybe the data is not accurate. Maybe there's this kind of a distortion because Montclair State University is maybe part of our denominator. But we ought to be capable to sort that out. You know, either there are cases or there are not cases. More important, what I'd like to be able to see is the council to appoint a representative. In addition to having a contract health department, have a representative who is responsible as our liaison for public health matters. If there are issues about whether or not people are being vaccinated or not being vaccinated, let's straighten it out. This is serious stuff. You know, we wouldn't be debating about whether or not there were robberies or weren't robberies. We would insist that the police department straighten out, do we have more robberies in the next count or not? There are new variants. You know that I work for CDC. I meet with my colleagues on a weekly basis. There are new, we're not out of the woods yet. This pandemic is part of our ecosystem. It's going to be with us for years and years to come. And it's going to be very similar to what you see now with influenza. Each year you're going to see a new vaccine which has a booster within it, which enables you to capture whatever the new variants are. But these new variants are very serious. So we're still in this final race. The final race is, can we get enough people immunized in order to achieve this concept of herd immunity before these new variants take over? So far, we've lucked out in that the new variants are only much more infectious than the current variant. But the danger is that we're likely to come across one, if we don't get enough people immunized, that is resistant to these vaccines. And we've seen a dramatic shift. We've gone from a period where people couldn't get vaccine, and there was a lot of chaos about the state rollout and what have you, to a period where we can't convince enough people to take the vaccine. And so this is a public health issue. I read the agenda. You know, I see items on the agenda where we ask for somebody to report on issues like the number of people who have dog licenses and other licenses. And look, and I think these things are important to a town. But I don't see I haven't seen a single agenda. We've invited the guy who's the director of public health in Clifton, who we contract with for public health services, to appear before us and answer our questions. Tell us what's going on. What are your plans for the future? What do you plan to do? Do you have contact traces? The answer is they do. Do you plan to keep these contact traces? That's interesting. I asked him a question and he surprised me with his answer. I said, do you have enough resources to get things done? And he said he did. And having a long experience in public health, it's very rare to talk to someone in public health who claims he has enough resources, but he says he does. I don't understand our relationship with the Clifton Health Department. I asked him, for example, what about having occasionally a virtual meeting for this community? This virus doesn't care whether you travel from Little Falls to Woodland Park to Passaic or what have you. This is a region, this is an area. And so once again, I just want to throw out to you, I think that we have an opportunity now, while it's kind of like a lull, if you would, you know, to get our act together, to figure out what went wrong. Clearly, the vaccine rollout was one of the most chaotic things you've ever seen. And to come up with a system, including our contract, to assure that in the future, if we have to have vaccine rollouts, that we don't have to go through this chaos again. And Mr. Mayor, if there's some confusion about how we count vaccine rates, for God's sakes, let's sit down with the state health department and ask their statistician to tell us what's in your numerator and what's in your denominator, so we have a realistic picture. of what percentage of our community is in fact immunized? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Scherzer, for coming on this evening and asking some really important questions. And the council would like, along with the mayor, no other than to be back at Town Hall, sitting at the dais and entertaining this meeting and doing the meeting there. There's been concerns with that. For instance, if we were to have, excuse me, a group of people show up, how that would be handled, et cetera. Before I pass on to the mayor, does any council member have any comments or questions they'd like to address to those questions that were raised? Mayor?
I was just going to say, just for the record, Mr. Scherzer, you met with Mr. Beagle from the Clifton, correct? This way everybody knows who you had met with. And it's good that, you got a chance to finally connect with him to go over some stuff. And, he has done a great job along with his staff of updating the mayor and the council, of course, on what's going on. And I know the mayor's probably going to talk about the report that was sent out earlier today. So it's good that you had that discussion. And we've discussed amongst ourselves as well, if there is an opportunity to have Mr. Beagle at a meeting or a separate type of town hall meeting to answer any questions. Because, depending on who you talk to in town, some people are happy we're not in that quarantine phase, and there's others that are still they feel like it's not over yet. So it depends on who you talk to in town as well, because I think people want to get back to normal, but understand that there are still some restrictions going on.
And by the new issue is going to be our schools. Are they open? Are they closed? Do we require or should we require that teachers be vaccinated? Should we require that township employees be vaccinated? And I'm not advocating one point of view or the other, because I'll tell you that it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of question. But it would certainly make sense if we came up with a policy that applied to all of the public schools and our regional high school in the same area. So we're all operating off of the same playbook. And right now there's no system in place to create a uniform policy within the surrounding towns and the surrounding school systems.
Mr. Scherzer, I sat on many of school boards, and those decisions are done by the school and come from the state. This governing body wouldn't have the authority. We could have, the mayor could talk to the superintendent and discuss ideas, but the authority of that, what you're discussing with the schools, lays entirely on the school board, and that's why there's elected school board members to make those decisions along with the superintendent.
Yeah, it's not an authority issue, it's a public health issue. And I will tell you that every school superintendent I've ever spoke to would welcome the input of the surrounding towns and communities, because these are tough issues. There's some people in favor of vaccines, some opposed. Are we going to ask the kids to be masked? Are they asking them not to be masked? So we don't have to have the authority, but we certainly have the responsibility to engage our school systems in a regional basis and just sit down and talk about what's going on. And I know from experience they would welcome it.
Yes, you're right, sir. Our primary goal as public officials is public safety. However, again, the school issues, we don't set policies with the schools. The school board sets those policies. But Mayor Damiano, would you like to address the concerns of Mr. Scherzer?
Sure, Mr. Scherzer, I can appreciate your concerns and where they're coming from. As I've said on a number of occasions, as much as myself and some other individuals on this Zoom call may like to think that everyone likes to hear what we have to say, there's about 6 people on this call that are joining us from the public. And I say that because this is, again, not the forum to have massive amounts of information shared with the public. When I look back at videos that have been on YouTube for over a year, there have been 16 people that watched them. And I can tell you myself and this council probably make up a half dozen of those 16 people that watched it. So I say that because as much as we think we have great things to say, nobody cares what we say at these council meetings as a general rule. Now, again, we are dealing with and addressing very important issues in town. Unfortunately, I think having almost no one from the public show up is a compliment to this council and this township in the way that it runs, because typically when people are not here objecting, or I should say when people are here, they're only here to object. No one ever comes to say what a tremendous job you've done. That's few and far between. But people not being on the call, I believe, is indicative of the job that this council has done. So having the health department on this call would literally achieve one purpose, and that would be to appease your request to have them on this call. And I say that because I'm in constant contact with them. I know they're in contact with the schools on a more than weekly, almost daily basis. These conversations are happening. You spoke to them. They addressed the questions and concerns you've had. I've asked those same questions. They addressed them. They've explained them to you. You just relayed them here to all of us. So the point is, I don't know what having them on this call would actually accomplish. Because, so that said, as far as the schools go, again, I've indicated they speak to them. As far as the numbers go, I've reached out to the county. I have asked the county to send this up the chain of command to figure out that denominator number that you were referring to, and it including 3,000 additional MSU students approximately, and what the impact of removing whatever that actual number of MSU students is would be on our vaccination rates. Again, I agree with you. I wish we had 100% vaccination across the board, so I never had to think about this thing ever again. There would be no one happier than me. But to fight, to advocate, to have this be the forum where our health department has to come, there is nothing that they can provide us that isn't in widespread media and social media already. There is nothing our local health department can do in Little Falls to advise these residents of something they don't already know. And the ever-changing things are broadcast immediately on every national news network that there is. I am thrilled to report that the email that went out earlier and the information I received earlier today was 0 new cases in the township. And I know I said I wasn't going to continue reporting on this, but 0 new cases 2 weeks after an absolutely horrendous Memorial Day weekend weather-wise, where everybody was forced to celebrate indoors because people still celebrated. I saw social media. I saw the parties people were having. People still celebrated indoors. And there were 0 new cases in the township 2 weeks after all of this celebration. So to me, that is outstanding news. Does that mean we are absolutely through the woods? No, it does not. We are not through the woods. We had these types of numbers at one point at the end, the fall last year, and then of course the holidays came, but that's pre-vaccination. I think this is very positive news. I was thrilled to see 0 new cases coming out 2 weeks after Memorial Day. Again, having the health department here, Mr. Beagle has told me on numerous occasions, he'd be happy to come here. He would do anything that I asked him as far as providing this information. But this is simply not the forum to do that.
That's not what I suggested to him. I asked him whether or not, in addition to appearing here, would he be willing to appear before a virtual town meeting, which would be set up and designed exclusively to keep people informed. He said yes. I would tell you that about 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, I posted something on the Tri-Town Facebook about the pandemic. I got over 150 responses. Let me repeat. I got over 150 responses. People are interested. The fact that this forum is not set up to invite lots of people has to do with the nature of this kind of a meeting. This is a tough meeting to sit through, and God bless you for doing it. But there are different ways of reaching our public. And I want to appeal to you, Mr. Damiano. Sometimes when I bring something up, and we've only been involved in this, I've lived in this town for much of my life, and it's only been recently that we've had a dialogue. I kind of feel sometimes like I'm in a courtroom. I'm not in a courtroom. I'm proposing something from a public health point of view. I've done it all my life. There's no reason it would cost us so little to periodically hold a virtual town meeting where people did not have to sit through the important but very mundane issues of a council meeting and have a presentation at the meeting. And by the way, invite somebody from the state for once to come down and say, how do you keep your data? How do you run your data? One more thing, let me tell you, the data is about to reverse itself. Montclair State University is now going to require that every student be immunized. So the fact that their numbers got mixed up in ours is about to turn everything around. But the point is not to celebrate or to condemn the numbers. This is not a contest. The point is to use these numbers to try to figure out what's going on. Where is this pandemic going? The one place, by the way, we have done a fantastic job and we ought to congratulate ourselves, is that the vaccine rates in Little Falls and the surrounding communities for senior citizens like myself are very, very good. And that's partly because you've stepped up and other mayors have stepped up. You provided outreach to the libraries and what have you. So there's a lot to celebrate when we work together like this. Okay. But I don't want to confuse coming to this meeting with a way of providing information to people in the public. Everyone here, you've been to stores in Little Falls recently. It's very confusing. You wear your mask, you don't wear your mask. We're in a transition period right now that people don't know whether to go left or whether to go right. And it's about to hit our schools as we get back into schools and what have you. So it isn't a question of having authority over the schools or authority over people or what have you. It's a question of bringing people in the most user-friendly way information that they need that's transparent, including you, James Damiano, to tell you, is the data being distorted by Montclair State or not? It would take a statistician in the state health department about 3.5 minutes to straighten that out. There's no reason why we have to operate this way. If this virus were issues of robbery and murder instead of cases and 14 deaths, we would demand that people give us the information that we want. I'm not asking for a lot of stuff. This is not rocket science stuff.
And to your
New
point,
Jersey,
Mr.
let me mention
Chair,
one other thing. This pandemic is part of our ecosystem. New Jersey, as a state, has one of the weakest public health infrastructures in the United States. And if we think we can rely on a state health department to run the public health affairs of 61 municipalities, 61 health departments, servicing over 90 municipalities, it's not going to happen. So we've been stuck. We're stuck as a local town with the fact that the kind of support that other state health departments and large health departments like Westchester and New York City and what have you provide, we don't have that. We have hardly any resources whatsoever devoted to this. Okay, so I don't want to argue with you about it. I want to see if we can take a more proactive point of view going forward. Appoint a committee, look into this, sit down for over a cup of coffee and find out, is there a better way that we can strengthen the public health support to keep our citizens straight? Okay, and I think everybody here wants to do
Thank you,
that.
Mr. Scherzer, for your comments and joining us this evening. The council hears you, the mayor hears you. It will definitely entertain your suggestions, and we hope you join us at the next meeting, and we'll follow through. The next speaker,
Mr. Vettery was next.
Mr. Vettery, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Council President, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I really just wanted to thank the mayor and council for their.
I'm sorry, did you give your address, sir?
I'm sorry, John Vettery, 110 Ridge Avenue.
Thank you.
Just wanted to thank the mayor and council for their continued support of the Passaic River Coalition. We have been hosting these planting events for, I think this was the 12th year, and we have probably planted 200 trees in that time, maybe more. On Friday, we planted 20 trees. We have 10 more on back order. And I have to commend Ronnie Campbell and the guys at the DPW. They did a tremendous job helping us. Ronnie was out there marking where to plant the trees, making sure they were properly spaced. And by the time the staff got there from Anheuser-Busch and the volunteers from the Passaic River Coalition, Ronnie and his team already had the holes dug. So it made for a very productive day. They got in. We got some awesome birdhouses from the farmers market that we will put in the parks. So again, thank you to the mayor, thank you to the council, and thank you to Ron Campbell and all the DPW guys. That's it.
Mr. Vettery, thank you for coming on this evening and joining us at the council meeting, and giving really good thanks to Ron Campbell. He does a wonderful job for the town, and thank you, sir, for what you do on the coalition. That area is definitely has definitely come a long ways. I know there's always been some rhetoric why you do that, why you want to take properties off the tax rolls, etc. sometimes, but it has worked very well for the town. Does the council members have any comments for Mr. Vettery?
I was just going to say the mayor jinxed
The
it.
floor, it's yours, Councilman Vanchery.
I was going to say the mayor jinxed it. He said nobody comes on to thank us, and Mr. Vettery just broke that streak. So thank you, Mr. Vettery.
Mayor, you have any comments regarding the River Coalition?
Yeah, simply that. It was the morale down there on Friday to see 25, 30 individuals from Anheuser-Busch and a handful of guys from our DPW, to see them working to beautify the township in an area that has been struck by a number of tragic events in the area. The morale down there was very good. It was a fun atmosphere. These guys, I've never seen people so happy to mulch in my life. I got to tell you, when I'm out in my yard mulching, you don't want to talk to me. I'm not in a good mood. This group was ecstatic and enthusiastic about it, and it was a very fun day. And I want to thank all of them and thank Mr. Vettery for bringing the coalition here to Little Falls to help us improve our lots. So thank you.
Mr. Kusia, is that Mr.
Mr.
Barone?
Mr. Barone is next.
Mr. Barone, the floor is yours, sir.
Good evening. Hi, Tom Barone, 26 Viewmont Terrace.
Thank you.
Just to
Good
keep the
evening.
good vibes going, I'll say the mayor and the council are doing a great job also.
Thank
right?
you.
Make
Thank
it-
you.
Just a suggestion I wanted to put to either the council president or to the council as a whole. Is it possible maybe general forum items could be either at the end of the agenda or perhaps have a time restriction and enforce it? Because for those of us that are actually interested in the agenda, with all due respect, it's like an hour of listening to things that I wasn't here to listen to. Not that they're not important. I live in this town and I love it, and I come on quite a few of these meetings. But I'd rather that be reserved for maybe later on, and we stick to the agenda in a more timely fashion. Just putting that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for joining us. Generally, we have a 3-minute rule. It's sometimes enforced and sometimes not. It all depends on how the dialogue's going, the importance of the issue, and if I feel that, it's the same question being asked over and over again. And other times, there's a lot of latitude to the speakers. So that's kind of at my discretion. As far as where we put the general matters in the agenda, Mr. Kusia, would you like to comment why we do it at a certain time, at certain meetings, one time and a certain time at other times?
Yes, we generally do it so that people who are there just to speak about a particular item don't have to wait for the agenda items, which is just opposite what Mr. Barone is interested in, because as you can see, most people don't really talk about the agenda items. And we've bounced it back and forth in past years, having it at the beginning, having it at the end. It's up to the council to determine, where they'd like to see it.
So that's fair, and I'll defer to you guys to make that decision. But I think for those of us that do look at the agenda and follow it, perhaps enforcing that timeline then, or the restrictions of timing would be really helpful, because we're 56 minutes into the meeting, and we're on item 1, I think. So just put it out there.
Council President, just to clarify, the other
Yes,
thing
Mayor.
we've done for these meetings is during workshop meetings, we typically do general comments first and agenda items next, last. The reason being, we've run into experiences at workshop meetings where the public has a lot of comments on what might be an agenda item that, because it's a very brief explanation of what's on the agenda, ends up getting a whole line of commentary that actually has nothing to do with that particular agenda item. So that is one of the reasons why we do that here, but vice versa at regular meetings, we do public comment regarding agenda items first and save the general comments for the end, because we don't want to vote on particular items without the public having the right to comment on them. So that is why we have a sort of flip-flopped approach as to when we have general versus specific agenda item comments.
To be 100% transparent, I like the general topics. It brings up things I might otherwise have not known about. But if we have no restriction on the timeline, it kind of, it becomes a grandstanding platform, and I'm just not into that. I just kind of want to hear a question and a response and move on.
Thank you for your comments. They're well heard, Mr. Barone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Are there any other residents that want to speak this evening, Mr. Kusia?
None that I see, sir.
Okay. At this moment, can I have a motion to close the public comment?
So moved.
Was that moved by Councilman Vanchery?
Yes.
Second? Second by Councilmember Hablitz. All those in favor of closing to the public signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to the motion signify by saying nay. The motion now carries. Can I have a motion to open to the public for the public hearing for the submission of the NJDEP Green Acres Program application for improvements to Lewis Street Park?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Moved by Councilman Vanchery, second by Councilmember Sieber. All those in favor of moving for the public hearing on the NJDEP signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, signify by saying nay. So we are now open for public hearing on the Green Acres for Lewis Street. Is there anyone that'd like to speak, Mr. Crucio?
I do not see anyone, sir.
I have a motion to close the public hearing regarding NJDP on Lewis Street for the Green Acres. To close the public, signify by saying aye. Have a motion, please.
So moved.
So
Moved
moved.
by Councilman Vanchery, not Councilman Kawadi, excuse me, second by Councilman Vanchery. All those in favor of closing to the public signify by saying aye.
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 All right, please speak up, council members. All those opposed signify by
Aye.
saying nay. All those, motion carries. Mayor, can you please discuss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7?
Sure thing, Council President. Some of them are regular monthly items. Some of them are new. The first item is a resolution authorizing the grant application for Main Street Streetscape Project. As has been discussed for the last, this will be the fourth year now, we are looking to have a streetscape installed along Main Street and some of the surrounding roadways. In fact, the ground was broken today for the very first time by the contractor on our streetscape that is starting on Maple Street. We have received 2 other grants so far that have been approved by the state of New Jersey for the streetscape to continue from Maple Street, heading west on Main Street down through Center Ave in that area at this time. This new application will continue the streetscape from approximately Center Ave down through the area of where the church is located there in town up to the Brownstone Apartments in that area of town. So this is just the next phase, the next leg of our grant application to continue our streetscape, continuing with the, again, what we have already sought 3 years worth of funding for. This is the 4th application. And that is sort of coupled with item number 2, which is the resolution authorizing the grant application for improvements to Stevens Avenue project. And on that one, we are using a similar but different Safe Streets to Transit grant that the state of New Jersey offers. It's a lot more competitive. We were denied last year in this one, which we attempted to apply for the area of Union Ave near the train station. We're hoping that with the new bus stop that we'll be installing on Stevens Ave, that we will have more success in applying here on Stevens Avenue to continue that same streetscape that I just referred to. So that's items number 1 and 2, Council President. Are there any questions on those?
Mayor, 3.
All right, item number 3 is the NJDEP Green Acres Enabling Resolution. As you just opened to the public, a NJDEP grant for funding for Lewis Street. Similarly, this is the resolution that allows us to seek those funds to make the improvements to the park. So this goes hand in hand with that public hearing that the township just held in that regard. Any questions?
4, Mayor.
All right, item number 4. This is one of the regular monthly items that we see on the agenda, the estimated tax bill resolution. I'm sorry, annual, I should say, resolutions that sets the estimated tax bills for the upcoming year. So that is an annual item that makes its way onto the agenda.
It's pretty straightforward. Number 5, Mayor.
Sure. Item number 5 is the resolution authorizing the shared service agreement with Elmwood Park. We currently offer a shared service to Elmwood Park and provide them with EMS services that the Township of Little Falls receives payment for annual or monthly or annually to provide to Elmwood Park, as well as we receive additional costs throughout the course of the year, billing the residents similar to the way that we bill our residents here in Little Falls, which is we collect what insurance pays on their calls. And for non-residents of Elmwood Park, we balance bill them similarly to as we do here in Little Falls. And this has proven to be a very beneficial revenue generating operation that we are running with Elmwood Park.
Any council have any questions, comments regarding that?
Mayor, can you just clarify?
Councilman Vanchery, the floor is yours.
Mayor, can you just clarify, because you know how I am sometimes on social media when people are telling us like what this means when it comes to Elmwood Park and don't have the information. Can you explain why this is taking place? Because someone made a comment like, well, isn't it the same thing as 2019? Why are they doing this with Elmwood Park? Can you just explain? Because again, this is where come to the source for information instead of telling everyone on social media what you think is the right answer.
Sure. So that's a great question, Councilman. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. So this is simply a renewal of the agreement that we have with Elmwood Park. This changes nothing, and it continues the operation as it has been with them. It is simply a renewal of the contract that we have with them. What this will do here essentially is, again, allow us to continue to operate in the same exact fashion that we have over the past handful well, past 2 years with Elmwood Park. So that is simply what this is. And again, there's no substantial change. What we do, and to provide a brief explanation as to what the township actually does, is Elmwood Park, much like Little Falls, has had a very difficult time a couple of years ago servicing the residents through their volunteer EMS program. And they were unable to make a significant number of calls. In fact, I believe they had several individuals having in cardiac arrest where they were experiencing 45-minute response times for an ambulance. And they found that to just be completely unacceptable. What we ended up doing as a township of Little Falls, or I should say, what one of the bigger issues other towns have, is they're unable to secure new licenses in order to provide or run a paid program, or they simply don't have the means or the ability to run a paid program out of their municipality. What they do is they essentially come to the township of Little Falls and ask us to provide that service for them, which is exactly what this is.
Thanks, Mayor.
Mayor, number 6.
Sure. Item number 6, Council President, is the ordinance. Bear with me, I'm just looking back to the number here. 1413, rescinding chapter 240-1. And let me get to 1413. Sometimes it's easier just having actual paper here. 1413 is the ordinance to rescind 240-1, which is the publication of delinquent taxpayer list in Little Falls. So one of the reasons that this year in particular we're looking to not publish names of delinquent taxpayers is because there have been a number of individuals in this town who have had a difficult time finding work over the past year, especially, who have had difficulties in maybe paying their taxes. And the reason, and I will tell you, I believe it has been proven to be ineffective as a means or a way to encourage or promote people to actually pay their taxes timely. The bottom line is, these individuals who are unable to pay or simply don't pay for maybe call it a strategic reason of their own, the township will eventually collect 100% of the taxes that are owed on that individual property. And in fact, the township will collect those funds with interest at a rate which is greater than that the township needs to borrow money at the times the township needs to borrow money. So what does that mean? It means A, we will collect 100% of that money at some point, and B, when people are out a period of time not paying their taxes and have a delinquency and are paying interest, the interest that they are paying is higher than any potential that we may have had to borrow funds at a particular rate. So the township will eventually collect all of it with interest and make out better than we did. So again, I think publishing names in the local paper simply is a tool that may embarrass people who have already gone through a difficult year enough and don't need the additional embarrassment of being unable to pay their taxes this year.
Does the council have any questions or comments regarding number 6? Mayor, number 7.
Sure thing. That is ordinance number 1414. This is an ordinance amending the fire division and section 3781, which is our EMS service here in Little Falls. We are simply amending it. So we are repealing and replacing the entirety of this code or of this ordinance. Again, we are looking to continue to run the EMS program out of Little Falls. Unfortunately, in the past, the EMS services reported to our fire chief was the structure that was set up, which made sense when it was volunteers reporting to a volunteer chief and running our volunteer program. We have evolved over the past couple of years here in Little Falls, where our EMS program is operating as a real business. And now that we're operating as a real business, I believe that the EMS portion of our ordinance should be more of an official reporting and should not report to a volunteer chief, but rather should report directly to the business administrator through the mayor's office, so that we can continue to run the business of EMT and emergency medical services for residents of Little Falls, currently Elmwood Park, and potentially future surrounding towns.
Does council have any questions or comments regarding item number 7? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve resolutions A through F at this time?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Moved by Councilman Quaddy, second by Councilmember Hablitz. Mrs. Kraus, please call the roll on resolutions A through F.
Councilmember Hablitz,
Yes.
Councilmember Kawadi,
Yes.
Councilmember Seaver,
Yes.
Councilmember Vanchery,
Yes.
Council President Scoba.
Yes, can I have a motion to approve correspondence item?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Vanchery, second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Kawadi. Mrs. Kraus, call the roll on the correspondence item.
Councilmember Hablitz,
Yes.
Councilmember Kawadi,
Yes.
Councilmember Seaver,
Yes.
Councilmember Vanchery,
Yes.
Council President Scoba.
Yes, we're gonna move, Mrs. Kraus, can you please read ordinance 1406?
Second reading and public hearing of ordinance number 1406, an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the Township of Little Falls adopting a redevelopment plan for the downtown redevelopment area.
Thank you. Have a motion to open to the public hearing on 1406.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Moved by Councilmember Kawadi, second by Councilmember Vanchery. All those in favor open to the public hearing on 1406 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to that motion signify by saying nay. The motion carries.
The
So the pub-
Karatkin is wishing to speak, sir.
Very good. Mr. Crockett, the floor is yours.
May have meant my comments in the previous section, so I'm sort of confused, and I wonder why, I applaud the town for its Main Street and redevelopment effort, but my question really goes back to the previous item, 1 and 2. I wonder why was the redevelopment town center proposal for the area north of Main Street, while we're not talking about developing areas south of Main Street, including work on Stevens Avenue? Shouldn't that be looked at a whole, area considered part of the town center and the redevelopment area?
So, but sir, this particular ordinance has,
I know, Council, with all respect, I overlook when you asked for the public comment on the previous thing. As a courtesy, could there be a response side, even though it's
Okay.
not directly related?
so, one more time. So you want to say that question? You're concerned why we're not?
My
why
question
Steve-
is, the redevelopment plan is as proposed, really focused on the area north of Main Street. The two items 1 and 2 discussed before the Main Street project discuss the area south of Main Street and Stevens Avenue. My question really is that since we're talking about those areas now and we're talking about public parking all south of Main Street, why wasn't that as a comprehensive area included when we talk about the town redevelopment of the town center?
Mayor, would you like to comment, or Mr. Conklin? Go ahead, Mayor.
Sure, I can respond. I believe this redevelopment plan was initially proposed to the township more than 24 months ago. This is not our first review of this redevelopment zone. And while you raise a good point, I think the time to do that was probably 2.5 years ago when it was initially presented to the township and the redevelopment was discussed. Now, I say that to say that that doesn't mean that there can't be another redevelopment plan created for any other section of the town where the township is promoting redevelopment. So a review of the south side of Main Street can be prepared or performed if we notice that there is any interest in any redevelopment in that particular section of the township. So while it's something that was not included in this plan, that's not to say that it's not something that can be done in relatively short order in the future.
Mr. Crockett, I know before you comment on that this council, this governing body has taken a very exorbitant amount of time on that redevelopment. It was not pushed through. We spent almost 2.5 years concerning this. So, but go ahead, the floor is yours.
I understand that, but my feeling is, and I realize this goes back even to Mayor DeFrancisci, the planning for the town center, but the south side of Main Street and the north side go hand in glove. We're talking about developing parking areas that are going to feed the town center. And yet, when we're talking about a comprehensive plan, we segregated north and south of Main Street. To me, it's confusing. and perhaps one day it can be rectified. I'm not saying this is a criticism. I'm not a critic. I'm trying to be positive and, get some sense of synergy where there's other concepts that maybe still be possibly to be considered. I'm looking for a comprehensive plan for the totality of what is the town center, which includes areas north and south of Main Street.
Mr. Kraken, if I may also, I do not believe that the south side of Main Street may actually qualify as an area in need of redevelopment. And that is because one of the primary criteria, and Mr. Conklin can speak to this a little bit more clear than I can, but I know one of the criteria for declaring an area in need of redevelopment is contiguous lots that are in a state of disrepair, I believe. And Mr. Conklin, maybe you can clarify my, my misstatement of that, or give me an assist on that one.
So, Mr. Conklin, the floor is yours, but before you answer that, Mr. Crocken, the redevelopment is important to understand that concept, and it's just not development, it's redevelopment. But Mr. Conklin, the floor is yours. Go ahead. You're on mute, sir. Sir, you're on mute. Mr. Conklin, we can't hear you. We had you. Go ahead, Mr. Conklin.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So just as the mayor indicated, this plan corresponds to the area needed that was requested to be studied. So it was determined that this area met the criterion in the local housing redevelopment law, which there are many different criteria, but this did wind up meeting that. So this plan is basically the implementation of zoning associated with this area need. Now, to speak to the south side, on top of the standards that we're proposing tonight, the township has also put forth the TV CBD zone as well as TV and D zones, which encompass some of the portions of the south side of the other side of the road. So those standards generally jive with the standards that we're talking about here today. So I would say that it's not necessarily a redevelopment area, but it does, I guess, embody some of the transit-oriented development principles, and there is zoning in place on the south side that facilitates that type of development.
And I thank you for the explanation, but maybe some of my confusion is perhaps I'm not clear as to what the definition, aside from the redevelopment plan, what is the boundaries of the town center? And if there were boundaries, my feeling was it should include the area south of Main Street where the parking area would be. So I guess I'm really talking about what are the boundaries of the town center?
Mr. Conklin, would you like to answer that? Are you specifically saying this project that's come before that we're voting on tonight, where the boundaries are?
So there's a transit village zoning district that is basically surrounding this redevelopment area. So from a zoning standpoint, land use standpoint, there's town and village center zoning that is larger than just these properties that we're talking about here. So if you want, you could take a look at the zoning map, which I believe is posted online. Otherwise, we could probably send it out.
I have a copy, thank you. I have one quick question about number 3, the Green Acres. On the copy of the agenda that I received.
Mr. Crocken, we're voting on 1406. We're only talking about that.
You
I'm
passed
sorry?
a resolution that the Green Acres one had no dollar amounts on the agenda.
Yeah, but Mr. Crocken, we're on 1406. We're not going to be discussing that at this point.
I realize that. I hope
I'm
you.
sorry. As was said before, these meetings are under guidance, and that's how we operate.
I hear you, but you voted on something where you didn't have dollar amounts.
Again, Mr. Crocken, we're on 1406.
Okay, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to mute. Thank you.
We're on 1406.
I hope so. No other council member would raise that concern.
Are there any other speakers on 1406 under public hearing?
No, sir, none that I see.
Thank you, Mr. Kush. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing on 1406?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Hablitz, second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Quadri. All those in favor of closing the public on 1406 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to adopt ordinance 1406?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Seaver, second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hablitz. All those, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kraus, call the roll.
Councilmember Havletts,
Yes.
Councilmember Kawadi,
yes,
Councilmember Seaver,
Yes.
Councilmember Vanchery.
Yes,
Councilmember
you hear me?
Vanchery.
Did you
Yep,
hear me?
I do.
Yes.
Yep. Council President Scoba.
Yes. Mrs. Kraus, please read ordinance 1413.
Introduction of ordinance number 1413, an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Little Falls in the County of Passaic, State of New Jersey, to rescind Chapter 240-1, publication of delinquent taxpayer list of the Code of the Township of Little Falls, with a second reading and public hearing scheduled for July 12th, 2021.
Can I have a motion to introduce 1413?
so moved,
Moved by Councilmember Kawadi, second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Vanchery. Mrs. Kraus, call the roll to introduce 1413.
Councilmember Havletts,
Yes.
Councilmember Kawadi,
yes,
Councilmember Seaver,
Yes.
Councilmember Vanchery,
Yes.
Council President Scoba.
Yes. Mrs. Kraus, at this time, please read ordinance 1414.
Introduction of ordinance number 1414, an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending the Little Falls Fire Division in the Code of the Township of Little Falls Code, Section 3-7.8.1, entitled Emergency Medical Service, and creating the Division of Emergency Medical Service, with a second reading and public hearing scheduled for July 12th, 2021.
Have a motion to introduce ordinance 1414.
so moved,
Moved by Councilmember Kawadi, second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Havletts. Mrs. Kraus, call the roll to introduce 1414.
Councilmember Havletts,
Yes.
Councilmember Kawadi,
yes,
Councilmember Seaver,
Yes.
Councilmember Vanchery,
Yes.
Council President Scoba.
Yes. Well, under council reports, Councilmember Vanchery, can you lead us off, please?
Sure. Thank you, Council President. I got a bunch of different items just going to go through as quick as I can. Just wanted to thank everyone that was involved in this year's Memorial Day weekend activities, including the ceremony as well as the concert. You know, unfortunately, the weather played a role in our scheduling because we originally had that event scheduled for Friday night and Memorial Day weekend, but unfortunately we had to cancel on Friday, but we're able to recover and actually have a concert on Memorial Day that Monday. And, you know, just grateful for all the volunteers that helped out, as well as the different vendors and businesses, as well as the performers. It ended up being a nice day, and it was good to see everyone out in the park. So definitely looking forward to doing that again next year, and hopefully we won't have to worry about the rain. But I think more importantly too is just, you know, bringing back the Memorial Day parade. I know that's something that, you know, we haven't done in the last couple of years. So looking forward to having that bigger and better next year. Also wanted to recognize too, on June 1st, a little over a week ago, you know, after our last meeting, we had our second annual Pride flag raising. So just want to thank everyone that was involved. And I know the mayor read the proclamation tonight. If you haven't noticed, the flag is flying at Town Hall. It will be for the entire month. And the lights also have the look and feel of the Pride flag. So, you know, it's something that we were proud to do again for the second year, and looking forward to doing it again next year. Then I just wanted to go over a couple things, Council President, that I'm looking to bring forth to the council probably sometime next month. I'm going to work with you and Mrs. Kraus, and of course Mr. Wenzel and Chief Post. We had pulled together a list of suggested streets in town where a stop sign should be considered. So looking to bring that list of 12 streets to your attention to get on the agenda. And then the other thing that Chief Post and I were working on with Mr. Wenzel was we did some digging. And if you notice, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, a lot of times, especially on Main Street near Montclair Avenue, or even Main Street on Union and that intersection, a lot of times what happens is vehicles tend to block the box. And it also makes it hard for someone that's looking to make a turn onto either one of those streets when there's cars blocking the road.
Excuse me, Councilman Vanchery, explain what block the box is. For those
Sure. So when you're basically blocking the passway, you know, as you're driving a car, if you're looking to make a left, say, for example, you're on Main Street, you want to make a left onto Union, but unfortunately the traffic is backed up going down Main Street, is in the middle of the Union Ave section. Therefore, you can't make a left. It's similar to what you see in New York City all the time. And then you see one of the NYPD officers come out of behind a pole, and then they give someone a ticket for that. But what we did was we looked into what's in place. And from a state stature standpoint, there is an ordinance in place when it comes to blocking the box. And I reached out to Chuck Silverstein, our Passaic County engineer, and Mr. Silverstein let us know that we don't need to pass an ordinance because it's already in place, as Woodland Park just introduced a blocking the box sign and painted the ground recently by McBride Avenue near the Gun for Hire store. But from talking to Mr. Wenzel, we talked about putting together a resolution that would list the intersections where we are looking to make sure that there is visible signage that says do not block the box, as well as painting the box on the actual road so that it can be enforced going forward by the police department. So that's something I'm working on, and Mr. Wenzel and I talked today as well about putting those details together to bring it forth at an upcoming meeting. A couple other things that I have coming up is on July 9th, which is a Friday night, we are going to have Little Falls night at Yogi Berra Stadium, the night when the New Jersey Jackals play. Had a discussion with the Jackals general manager last week, and I'm waiting for him to share the flyer that we can blast out and make available at various locations around town, because there will be a particular promotional code for Little Falls residents to purchase tickets. The other thing that we're working on is, and we're just going through some of the details behind the scenes with the Jackals, if we are allowed to have the athletes from town, whether it's grammar school or high school, march on the field before the game. We're just working through that. There's some other requests that come through. Mayor Damiano, I'm probably going to reach out to you about recording a video that will play on their Jumbotron at the game as well. So more details to come, but Friday, July 9th will be Little Falls night. Mr. Fernandez, we couldn't do the Saturday night because it's a firework promotion. I know you've asked me about that in the past, but Friday is where they preferred. And we're just juggling a few things because unfortunately, with some of the restrictions with some of the teams they typically play up in Canada, not allowed to come in. They had to reconfigure a few things. So I'm hoping to have that flyer shortly. And then just wanted to pass on tonight. Today was actually Flag Day, for those of you that don't know. And this evening, Mayor Damiano, Councilman Kawadi, and I attended the ceremony on Van Ness at the American Legion, as the both American Legions in town, as well as the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts, held the ceremony to put the old flags to bed via the annual ceremony. And just want to thank the American Legion and the Scouts, of course, for doing a great job. And of course, Little Falls Fire Department there to help start the fire and then make sure nothing happened. But just wanted to recognize Flag Day as well. That is it for me, Council President.
Thank you. Thank you for those in-depth reports. Councilmember Havlis.
Yes, thank you, Council President. So I just want to go over some updates with the library. The library was very busy this weekend. First, they started off with their 105th birthday celebration. It was really very successful. It was a great event. It was held outside. They had cupcakes, and Miss Linda read stories to the children. There were games, and it really was a very successful event. It was very nice to see the community come out, get together, and celebrate the library. Also, the library had a fundraiser this weekend with Chipotle for Eat for Change. That was also successful. It raised a little bit of money for the library, and hopefully the library is going to have a few other fundraisers to help them raise money. It's important to do that for the library so we can keep on the cutting edge of doing things with our library. Also, the library was at the farmers market this weekend as part of our community. They had many signups. They had engagements from the community, people coming to the farmers market, asking them questions. They had a cute little raffle for Flag Day. It was red, white, and blue Legos, guess the Legos. And they gave away a gift certificate from the Creamery. So thank you to Tom Barone and the Creamery for that. Also tomorrow, they're having a preschool Father's Day story and take home craft. It's one of the first event, well, I should say the second event that they're going to be doing outside, but one that will be done in Wilmore Park with Miss Linda. So again, very nice to be getting out there, doing events with the kids and getting outside, enjoying the fresh air. They also have for the Friends of the Library is going to be doing their summer book drive. So we are taking books from the community. If you want to clear out your closets, clear out your bookshelves, donate some books to the library that will then be for sale on June 25th from 11 to 4 and June 26th from 11 to 2. So that's another event that the Friends of the Library will be holding. And if you don't know about the Friends of the Library, please come join their meeting. Their meeting is June 29th, 7 p.m., which will still be via Zoom, but you can get the link on the website of the library. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you for that fine report. Councilmember Sieber.
Thank you, Council President. So this past Sunday was a beautiful day. We had our third farmers market that does run through November 7th. We have a lot of new and exciting vendors cycling through the market season, as well as a lot of our shoppers' favorite vendors returning throughout the season and through the next couple months. I do want to announce that we have put plans in place with the Clifton Board of Health to actually do a COVID vaccination event on the 27th, June 27th. So this will be a free event. This is a walk-up vaccination clinic at the site of the Little Falls Farmers Market. We will be publishing a flyer in this coming week, so be on the lookout for that. And it will be also on social media, as well as in some email blasts and other forms of media. And then we did also feature, just like the library, we also did feature the Municipal Alliance Group at the farmers market this past Sunday, and they were selling popcorn as a fundraiser. And then just as a side note, just thank you to Mr. Vettery for purchasing those birdhouses from our vendor KM Planters, who is at our market. That are a wonderful vendor, and I know those birdhouses will help beautify the area when they are put up. That's it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Kawadi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. I look out at the group of people that are here tonight, and I just want to acknowledge how many of the people that are in attendance tonight use their voices and their talents for the betterment of Little Falls. There were a few other people that I noticed who have since left the meeting, but it takes a village to be a community like ours, and this village has really come together well. And I just want to acknowledge, I won't acknowledge people individually, you know who you are, but I just want to acknowledge as a whole how proud of this community I am that so many of us come out. I see faces at the events that we have. Sometimes I feel like I see the same faces a little too often. I'd like to see people bring their neighbors a little bit more, and let's get some new faces out. But we can't do this stuff alone. And I want to just mention how much I appreciate the people that are so dedicated to Little Falls with all of their efforts. A couple of events that are coming up on that note. I did attend the retiring of the flags today that was run by the American Legion. It was a great ceremony. I'm proud to say my son was involved with it with the Boy Scouts. And thanks to them as well for giving everyone a proper way to dispose of flags that are no longer suitable for display. The Little Falls Business Association is planning Little Falls Week, which is going to be July 12th to the 17th. It's going to start with an event at the library, and it will continue on the 13th with their block party. And it will go all the way to July 17th, which is our Water Fun Fest, which will have some water slides, a dunk tank, and a giant water gun fight. Bring your own water guns, bathing suits, and towels. We're going to have a good time at that. We have 5 movie nights that we're planning beginning July 28th and continuing on Wednesday nights through the month of August. The films that will be shown are to be determined and announced, but I can tell you we are planning Christmas in July and Halloween in August. So we're going to do a couple of theme nights at the movie nights. Parents' Night Out is getting off to a slower start than I would like. It seems that there may not be enough Recreation Department employees to do one in June, but by the time July rolls around, we're confident that there will be enough employees to staff it. And so we may do 2 of those this year instead of 3, but we're looking forward to that as well. And that's it for me, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you for that great report, Councilman. As far as the senior advisory, 2 weeks ago, had a very nice afternoon. The mayor, Damiano, and Councilman Quaddy attended. John Morano and his band played a great melody of music. We gave them some snacks, and then we gave them some ice cream from the creamery, which they were ecstatically happy. And they really had a great time. We're planning the next event on coming up is the Pencil Works on June 23rd at 11. There's a few slots left to do some recreation of drawing. If you want, you can contact the Recreation Center for the last remaining spots. Coming up on July 21st, since music was such a big hit, and so was the ice cream from the creamery, we're going to bring in Mark Darcy, who used to play in a lot of bands, and he's been around a long time. He's a great musician, and he'll be playing from 1 to 3 on the 21st at the Civic Center. For any seniors that would like to join us, that information is going to be going out shortly. I want to discuss 2 laws that the legislative have recently passed, just in case it affects our residents. Is no longer will you be able to carry around dirt on the back of your pickup or a truck. There's been some issues with so-called dirty dirt, so you're going to have a license to carry around dirt and topsoils. So those people, if you decide that you're just going to go get a pile of dirt from somewhere, that's going to be outlawed. Also in May of 2022, styrofoam cups and straws and containers will no longer be able to be allowed. That law will take effect in 2022. So restaurants with takeouts that are now supplying styrofoam containers, that is going to be outlawed. The mayor has presented the council with some drafts concerning cannabis. As the residents know, that this law has passed, but it's up to the township municipalities of deciding what licenses what licenses the municipalities want to put in effect. They're currently reviewing the drafts. The 2 areas that certain licenses will be allowed is the Route 46, our business area, and the west side of Patterson Avenue, extending from about the mechanic shop that's currently there all the way to Route 46. At this time, can I have a motion to open for public comment?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Hablitz, second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Sieber. All those in favor open for public comment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Mrs. Kraus, please read the public comment.
Members of the public who desire to provide comment shall raise their virtual hand in the Zoom application. The meeting moderator will cue the members of the public that wish to provide comment, and the council president will recognize them in order. Members of the public who have joined the meeting by calling in must press *6 to mute and unmute themselves and *9 to raise their hand. Members of the public who have joined the meeting via the Zoom application must click the reactions icon and then the raise hand icon. Please give your name and address for the record. Once the process is complete, we will return to the regular order of business.
Thank you, Mrs. Kraus. Mr. Kusha, is that Mr. Barone who wants
Mr. Barone would like to speak, yes.
Mr. Barone, you don't have to say your address. The floor is yours.
You got it. Just a real quick one. I think painfully some of you are aware that I've had some issues with how Schumacher handles the loading and unloading of some of its car carriers on Main Street. And I know we've done some great things to try to limit that. And I think they've been accommodating. My only question is the space directly in front of Midas, as I understand it, is a no parking area. And it feels to me, I've seen it more than once, I've called the police a couple of times, that when there is a truck loader that goes all the way up to Maple, following the parameters of the parking sign, which I do think is too close to Maple, quite frankly. If you're trying to make a left off of Maple onto Main Street and there's a car loading there, it's very dangerous. But that said, they're parked appropriately and within the right spot. The next one waiting to go is parking in front of the Midas dealership or shop or whatever it is. And it's terrible because everyone knows making that left off of First is already kind of tricky. Now you have a car loader there and it's so narrow that cars coming, I guess that would be westbound on Main Street, who have to go around that car loader are going 4 or 5 feet into oncoming traffic to get, to progress down Main Street. It's really, really dangerous. I believe it's a no parking zone. if you can confirm that for me. And if it is, maybe we could do a sign or a yellow curb there, because that's been my newest gripe about how Schumacher is handling their cars. They're letting one kind of park there and wait. And it really is quite dangerous. I'm not just being a stick in the mud. It's someone's going to get hurt.
There's no such thing as a stick in the mud in this platform, sir. Does any council members have any comments or questions regarding Mr. Barone's, I don't want to say complaint, concerned?
I think Mr. Barone means Mavis.
I'm sorry, the floor, Councilman Quaddy, the floor is yours.
I just wanted to say, I think he means Mavis discount
Right.
tires.
Yeah, I didn't, it wasn't made, right? For the record.
And there are curb cuts there. So it would seem to imply that a curb cut is a no parking zone in and of itself, right? I don't
There's
know.
almost exactly enough space in between the two curb cuts. I'm sorry. I hate Zoom. I can never tell if I'm talking over you, but there seems to be exactly enough space between the two curb cuts. They have like an east entrance and a west entrance, and they've been parking right between them. And I walk my dog there every single day. It's very, very dangerous. I've seen kids trying to go around it. I've seen cars flying past it. It's a terrible intersection as it is. And when you compound it with a massive 18-wheeler sized truck, it's really quite dangerous. I just don't know if there's a way to signify, if I'm right, that that's a no parking, but I'm pretty sure it should be.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the part where they do park is a wider street. And I think that you probably have a point that they shouldn't necessarily be parking where the road narrows that much.
Councilman Vincherry, I know you know every corner in our town that's parking, no parking. So
yeah, and I can tell you, Mr. Barone, a couple years ago we changed on Main Street because it's 25 feet from the curb, and that's why we put the sign there. And the DPW also painted the yellow line to make sure. And we just actually had some updates to Maple Street as well. There was a little confusion with the no parking signs on both sides, and there was a sign that disappeared. So the DPW was out there recently fixing that, because there have been some cases too where those trucks try to park on Maple, which they can't do. I know the mayor's been in contact with the chief as well, and I can tell you every time in the morning when I'm driving the kids to school or coming back, I see one of those deliveries and it's parked the wrong way. I call the police department as well, because there's rules for a reason. I think we can look into where the Mavis Tire is in that area, because maybe also as we did on the corner, we had the signs that say no parking from here to whatever, and then put the yellow lines again as a reminder, because I think that's where,
since I took my traffic, I went for my license. It's directly across from the intersection.
Yeah. No, I know. That's why that one area you're not supposed to park, and I've seen it a couple times where it's like one waiting after the other one drops off. So, Mayor, I think we can look into it. We can see what can be done from the police department, but also if we need to add some signage from the DPW and paint the lines appropriately, I think we could do that.
Yeah, so a quick Google Maps search of the area does not have any signage there that prohibits parking. That doesn't mean that parking is not prohibited there. Again, I don't know directly, being in a T intersection, if it is or is not permitted, that may be a reason to prohibit it automatically. I don't know if our ordinance also prohibits parking in that particular area, so we can look into that. Again, if it's prohibited by virtue of law, again, being a T intersection, and it's not permitted, then a simple sign will suffice. If it's somewhere that the township wants to prohibit it, but it would otherwise be permitted, we would need to amend the ordinance to prohibit parking in that area, and then after that, install a sign indicating that it was prohibited. So it's definitely something we can look into. It may be prohibited by virtue of law already, but we will have to look into that and get a response.
Thank you.
Mr. Barone, any other questions this evening?
That's all I got.
Thank you.
Mr. Karakin is
Mr.
next.
Karakin, the floor is yours. Would you like to ask about the Green Acres?
Yes, I thank you. So a question about and I think it's very positive, the Lewis Street Park Improvement Project, Resolution C. But one of the sections, I'm going to read it. This is a quote, and I wonder if you can fill in the dollar amounts. It said, at least the agenda I received, whereas the Township of Little Falls desires to further the public interest with obtaining funding in the amount of X dollars in the form of an X dollar matching grant for the state to fund the following projects: the Lewis Street Park Improvement Project at a cost of X dollars. Do we have a dollar amount for those?
Mr. Kusia, why do we write the ordinance that way? Explain to the public.
Council President, I can also assist here a bit.
Okay.
Only because I've seen an email recently from the engineer who's handling that project, who needed assistance from our DPW to figure out water tables. So we are waiting for an exact cost estimate on that project so that we can ask for the Green Acres grant to subsidize 50% of the cost. So we just don't know what the cost is at this time. And that is the reason for the X dollar amount as part of it. Mr. Kuchia may have more than that.
Only to add, Council President, that the requirement is that we have a public hearing on the proposed grant. And the purpose of the resolution is to make sure that we hold a public hearing on the intent of the grant.
Right. And in the future, the public will know exactly what we're spending. Is that correct?
Correct. We would have to do a capital ordinance and we would have to accept the grant when we get it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Crockett, satisfied with the answer?
I am very satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
It was my pleasure.
Good. Is there any other resident that would like to speak? Mr. Fernandez?
No, I'm okay.
Good.
None that I see, sir.
I'm sorry? No one else?
I don't see any other raised hands.
All right. Have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Kawadi, second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Seaver. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that motion signify by saying nay. Thank you, everyone. Good night. This meeting is now adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.